So we are here today for the webinar on combating hate crimes, civil society practices. We have very prominent speakers with us today. We have from Poland, Never Again, and Stop Hate UK from the UK, and also Freedom of Belief Initiative from Turkey will be sharing their experiences. And this webinar will be moderated by Betsy Penso. Unfortunately, Murat Köylü from Kausçal will not be able to join us in today's webinar. There was a very important civil society defender, Funda Tekin, who worked also with Kausçal and other civil society organizations. We are very saddened by the passing of Murat Tekin. We wish his loved one patience, and we extend our condolences. That's why our speaker, Murat Köylü, could not join us today. My name is Mine Yıldırım. I'm the coordinator of Freedom of Belief Initiative, and the initiative has been carrying out its activities to protect the rights of religion, belief, and non-belief for everybody. We do systematic monitoring and reporting to that purpose, and we always base our activities on universal rights and international norms. And we also share our findings with both national and international mechanisms. We also carry out activities raising awareness for freedom of religion and freedom of conscience. We organize various events that bring different segments of society. Freedom of Belief Initiative carries out activities under the Norwegian Helsinki Committee. The committee is an independent human rights organization based in Oslo. European Endowment for Democracy is our donor for the activities that we are currently carrying out. For more details on the Freedom of Belief Initiative, you can visit our website as well as our Twitter and Instagram accounts. So before I hand it over to our moderator, Betsy Penso, I would like to also welcome you for joining us. I would like to offer a very brief information about you. Betsy graduated from a number of universities, from Üsküdar American Academy and Koç University Faculty of Law. She worked as a volunteer in different positions, including Turkish Jewish community organizations. She's been working as a lawyer. She is a key contributor and the editor of Avlaremoz, an online platform publishing news and op-eds on minorities in Turkey and Jews around the world. She completed her MBA at IDC Herzliya University, and she lives in Israel. Over to you, Betsy. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank you for entrusting me with moderation in this very important webinar. Hate crimes, hate speech and hate crimes carries a certain weight in my own life too. So I'm a lawyer, and I don't know if I can also name myself as such, but also as an activist. I'm very happy about this webinar. I would like to give you more information about Avlaremoz. This is an online platform. It was set up by a group of friends in 2015. Over the years, it started addressing different issues and also for the different target groups. Initially, the online platform covered news about anti-Semitism, but today we have actually coverage of many minorities, including LGBT community, Kurds, and women. So we try to be as inclusive as possible. So to the extent possible, we try to share some up-to-date op-eds. We also have archiving, storytelling as well. And as a lawyer, it is actually difficult to talk about uh, the legal aspects of hate crime in Turkey. We have the Turkish Criminal Code, which has some provisions that aggravates the penalties for hate crimes, although hate crime is not a separate crime on its own. So it's actually covered as part of inciting public to hatred and violence. But because of the current legal provisions, the minority groups continue to be victims of all those issues. Today, we will be mostly focusing on the civil society practices about hate crimes. I don't want to take much of your time, so without further ado, I would like to turn to our first speaker, Anna Tatar from Never Again. Let me give you some brief information about Never Again. Anna is the representative of the Never Again Association. She will be delivering the presentation in English, so I will introduce her in English as well. So if you wish, you can choose Turkish language to listen to interpretation.
Against racism and discrimination in Poland since 1996. In addition to their comprehensive hate crime and hate speech reports, they pursue multidimensional campaigning and advocacy activities against discrimination. And Dr. Anna Tatar is a representative of...
Okay, now it's working.
Never Again Association and co-editor of the monitoring report on racism and xenophobia in Poland, the Brown Book. She earned her PhD at the Faculty of Polish Studies and the University of Warsaw. As a member of the Never Again Association, she participated in the International Visitor Leadership Program, devoted to combating violent extremism that was organized in 2019 by the United States State Department and the US Embassy in Warsaw. So Anna, the platform is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. I know that I have 15 minutes and it will be extremely difficult to talk about every important issues, but I will try. I would like to talk to you about hate crimes and hate speech in Poland, and my presentation is based on the monitoring entitled Brown Book that is provided by Never Again Association. Never Again was established in 1996. We have been trying for all these years to counteract racism, xenophobia, discrimination, and prejudices. The most important part of our work is to provide hate crime and hate speech monitoring, but we also carry out some educational campaigns against racial and ethnic prejudices. Our motto is human beings, not nations. The very important part of our work is to is to break the silence around the problem of racism and xenophobia in Poland. For years, we have been asked, racism in Poland, are you sure? So we've tried to show the audience, show the public opinion that there is a problem with racism, violence, with far-right groups. And it's not in the center of our social and political life, but it is a problem. And we tried to build an inclusive movement against racism and discrimination. Most of our co-workers are volunteers, who some of them are with us from the beginning, from the middle of 90s. And we also talking about such negative phenomena as hate speech, hate crime. At the same time, we try to promote respect for diversity, our multiculturalism, and diversity in social in society these are very important values that we try to show as values, which is absolutely not obviously in our country. A few words about the Brown Book. It's a documentation which monitors crimes that were committed by neo-fascists and extreme right, as well as racist, xenophobic, and homophobic incidents and acts of discrimination in Poland. And the Brown Book is the most reliable summary of information about racist.
Anna, we cannot hear you.
And now?
Yes, now we can. Thank you.
Someone muted me. I don't know what's going on. It was not me.
No problem.
Okay, so please signal when something is wrong. And the Brown Book, as I said, is often used by media and international organizations that are interested in this problem. And through this publication, we try to reach the public opinion to show the situation of minorities groups in Poland, and at the same time to promote some anti-racist attitudes. And what do we document in this monitoring? We describe physical assaults on the basis of skin color, language, or religion. We document acts of verbal aggression, some street demonstrations that are organized by far right and with hateful slogans against minorities. Also, we document fascist and racist banners that are displayed on the stadiums, football stadiums, and of course, a large part of our monitoring, we are focused to document the examples of online hate speech and hate speech that is used by politicians, sportsmen, celebrities, musicians. So that is used by people who are public figures and are responsible for the public discourse in Poland. And I would like to show you some examples trying to tell you something what happened in Poland last years. And I will start from 2015. It was the time of a refugee crisis, and it was the middle of 2015. And suddenly in Poland, it became a huge political topic because the election was very close. It was the middle of 2015, and the election was organized in autumn. And suddenly the people, refugees, were presented by politicians, mostly far-right politicians, as threat. They were presented as Muslim. It means terrorists. It means the enemy of Poland. And this chain, this false, extremely racist, xenophobic chain was presented in all media. When I remember when I watched TV or listened to the radio at that time, every time I saw the boats on the sea, and it was the feeling that these boats will go to Poland, and we and all the wave of people will threat our country. It was this kind of discourse. It was main topic, what was a very big mistake. And of course, these people were presented for political reasons, not as refugees, people with names who tried to leave their country because they had very important reason to save their lives, but they were presented as people with no names, but as a wave of people. And no one really understand at that time who are they? Why are they do they want to go to Poland? From which country are they? No one, it was a lack of such kind of personal information about them. And soon this hysteria around refugees, it became like a political fuel. And very soon from the internet, we heard it on the streets, we heard it in our private life, these xenophobic slogans against refugees. And what is important at that time in 2015, 16, 17, there were almost no refugees in Poland. So it was not a real problem. It was problem created by politicians. And far-right groups organized many xenophobic manifestations. You can see here, no to Islamization of Poland. And that was one of the main slogan, or welcome to hell, you little lost lambs, and the mosque and was crossed out. That was also a very popular Islamophobic symbol. No to the migrants. Islam, the death to white Europe. It was here, the photo was taken in Warsaw. It was one of the biggest anti-migrants xenophobic manifestation that time. And what was the result of it? People who are dark-skinned, who had nothing common with being a refugee, who visited Poland or had lived here for many years, they were attacked more and more often, and they were called Muslims. That was the very, let's say, simply effect of hate speech. Hate crimes were a result of it. And I want to skip one of our report. And now something that we all observe since the February 2022. The war began, the war against Ukraine. And in April, so 2 months after the war broke up, we decided to publish a report about anti-Ukrainian incidents in Poland. And that was very problematic for us and a very difficult decision to make, because that was a time when the wave of authentic social solidarity towards refugees from Poland, we could observe. Mostly people somehow helped the Ukrainians. They welcomed them in their private house. They sent some money. They went to the borders, Polish-Ukrainian borders, and just bring them some food or clothes. So it was time of solidarity, a wave of solidarity. And we, from the even first day of the war, we immediately noticed that it's not the only social attitude, that the Polish far-right groups want to destroy the good Polish-Ukrainian relationship. And Polish far-right started to spread anti-Ukrainian conspiracy theories, false information, hateful contempt, full of anti-Ukrainian prejudices. And some examples from our brown book. First day of the war, the day of Russia's attack on Ukraine, and in the following weeks, Katarzyna Sokołowska, who is founder of some far-right organization, she posted extremely anti-Ukrainian material on her Facebook and Twitter profiles. On the day the war began, she wrote, "Will the hordes of Ukrainians coming to us be scanned?" First day of the war, and you can see the sample of a tone and atmosphere that far right started to create around the Ukrainian refugees. And we documented many examples of anti-Ukrainian hate speech and conspiracy theories, because we were fully aware that these people are not imagined. Because refugees from Asia and Africa in 2015, these people, they were not in Poland. They were just used as a figures in a discourse. But Ukrainians, they began, and they are our neighbors. They live with us, work with us, and millions of Ukrainians came or stay in Poland. No one knows the exact numbers. So it was and it is extremely dangerous to spread anti-Ukrainian message, because we have to try to build good relationship, not to create fear and prejudice, because what will be the final of such atmosphere? And let me talk something about the impact of Brown Book. A large part of the incidents we document, of course, they are only examples. We are not able to document everything, every information that we have. We sent to YouTube some report about a very big far-right channel entitled In Real 24. And in this YouTube channel, it had more than 500,000 subscribers. What in Poland, it was a large number. And they attack all minorities for years, Jews, LGBT, Muslims. They spread fake news about the coronavirus, trying to stop people from taking the vaccines. And we tried to persuade YouTube to remove it. We tried to show how dangerous such message is. And after a few years of trying, YouTube removed it. And we were very glad, because it was, let's say, a unique situation in Poland. In February this year, we documented another report that based on the Brown Book, about another far-right channel entitled National Media. What was very interesting, that this channel got money from the Polish Ministry of Culture. It was funded by far-right activists, and they got some fundings to help the refugees from Ukraine, and at the same time they spread anti-Ukrainian message through the YouTube channel. And after our report, just 2 or 3 days later, YouTube deleted this channel. So there are 2 examples what for we do provide Brown Book, but it's not the main aim to delete some YouTube channels. The main goal of the Brown Book, and I can tell that many times we succeeded, is to arouse great media interest, and to make our Brown Book publication about hate crime and hate speech the subject of an in-depth public debate. And we for years we have been able to speak out on the issue of hate speech against minorities in Poland, and to point out the intensification of this phenomenon, especially lately against refugees from Ukraine. In public debate, in media, we strongly also talk about the institutions and their inadequate response to the problem of prejudice. And also we point out that in Poland, law that is quite good, law connected with hate speech and hate crime, is not enforced, and the paper rules are not enough. This year, we published the Brown Book that contains incidents from 2020-23. It contains more than 300 pages, and description after description, hate crime, hate speech, people who are attacked, and date and place after place. And at the end of my speech, I would like to tell you, if I have 2 more minutes, about one of our social campaign, because the Brown Book, I would say, it's a start point to show the problem, to have the knowledge about what's going on, but also we try to promote something positive, as I said, trying to show and promote respect for diversity. And one of our social campaign is Let's Kick Racism Out of the Stadium. And in the frame of it, we monitor such content on the stadiums, but also we organize some football anti-racist tournaments, or participate in some meetings and lectures about the sport and racism. How can be racism over, how can sport helps to act against racism? Every summer in Poland, there is a Polish Woodstock Festival. It's the biggest free open air festival. Last few years, it gathered even more than 500,000 participants. Its atmosphere is very friendly, and many different people participate in it. And it's not only music festival. We go there and we organize Let's Kick Racism Out of the Stadium tournament. And you can see some pictures with this slogan, respect. And this man on the right is former Polish ombudsman, Adam Bodnar, who he gave us the patronage. And also he was a referee, and even he played during this game. And also he was, I'm showing you the photos from our Poinstead, because during one of such meetings in such informal atmosphere, Adam Bodnar was our guest, and it was a unique opportunity to talk about very serious issues, like how to react to hate crime, how to react to hate speech, what to do when your friend is attacked because he looks somehow different. And this informal atmosphere, it was a great opportunity to all these young people to talk with a great lawyer and Polish ombudsman, and ask him very important questions. So we try to, as I said, document hate and present it to the public opinion. We try to reach the public opinion, but also we are able to meet with young people, not necessarily young, but with the people who often are who often experience themselves the problem of racism, or their friends experience it, and we want to give them knowledge and kind of empathy to be able to react on it. So thank you very much. I invite you to our Facebook profile, which is also in English. Thank you.
Dear Anna, thank you for your for sharing your insightful notes with us. So I also personally agree that public figures are very, very important for this kind of campaigns. And I also believe that we should now treat NGOs also like normal marketing companies. So I think also we should work with micro-influencers for any kind of awareness stuff. So I really believe that you're doing a very good job. And now I want to move on with our second speaker, Bill Howe. He works in Stop Hate UK. Founded in 2006, the UK-based Stop Hate UK works against hate and discrimination. They offer 24-hour reporting support against all kinds of hate crimes. In addition to advocacy and support for victims, they carry out activities such as training programs and campaigns for social change. Bill has enjoyed a career involved in the delivery, development, and management of specialist advice service in a variety of statutory and third sector settings, including 4 years as welfare rights officer with Bradford City Council, 20 years as student advice center manager, and then non-commercial services manager with a large higher education students union. Since joining Stop Hate UK in 2015, Bill has worked extensively both as helpline operator, engaged in all aspects of the delivery of frontline services, and over the last 7 years has also been involved in the development and successful delivery of a number of short-term projects aimed at understanding and responding appropriately to manifestations of hate speech online. So, Bill, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Excuse me while I share my screen, if I can remember how to do it. Thank you to Anna for that very interesting and inspiring speech, but also quite frightening in the sense of the similarities between the situations in the UK and in Poland. So my name's Bill. I've been working for Stop Hate UK now for, well, since 2015, so nearly 8 years. My job title is rather strange, but it's a carryover from my very early involvement in what we call the No Speech Movement, which was a European youth movement founded by activists in Italy, and specifically to encourage activities around combating hate speech. So I still retain the title. Stop Hate UK has been around for quite a long time. We're a leading anti-hate and discrimination charity, and we basically provide reporting and support facilities 24 hours a day, 365 days a year for anybody that experiences hate based on any aspect of their identity. In the UK, we call these the protected characteristics under the Human Rights Act. So that's one of our strap lines. It's less about focusing on individual aspects of identity and more about just encouraging people to report what their experience is and work with us to help them navigate through a complicated system. Our vision is basically to make ourselves redundant to be in a world which is free from hate and harassment, and there's no need for organisations like Stop Hate UK. Our patron is Baroness Doreen Lawrence. Like a lot of organisations, our roots are in a very negative situation. The young man on the right is Stephen Lawrence. Doreen, on the previous slide, is Stephen's mother. Stephen was murdered after an assault at the bus stop after an evening with a friend. It became a very high profile, very celebrity case. And essentially provoked a major change in the way that police forces in the UK deal with crimes which are rooted in antagonism towards people's personal identity. So our roots as an organisation stem from around 2006, when we launched our helpline, a lot of activists involved in the organisation at the time. The helpline was run by volunteers. The team then were basically responding to an inquiry that followed on after Stephen's murder, which recommended that all possible steps should be taken by police services at local level in consultation with local government and other agencies and local communities to encourage the reporting of racist incidents and hate crimes. And the Macpherson report, as it was titled, had two specific recommendations which we reacted to as an organisation. One, to create facilities where people can report other than at a police station for all sorts of reasons, mistrust of authority being one of those barriers that sometimes prevent people from reporting hate incidents and hate crimes, and the ability to report 24/7, 365 days a year. So we're very proud of the fact that we've been able to maintain that service ever since. The report also introduced a couple of very complicated legal provisions. One of them was to try and encourage the recording of racist incident, an incident being perceived as racist by the victim. And this is quite unique, I think, to British law. It's not, it's a quasi-legal thing, but it's there to recommend to police forces and to organisations like ourselves that we record not only crime, but incidents. And now we record incidents which may be related to any of the protected characteristics and not just racism. But our roots are in an organisation specifically focused on racism. At that time, it was called Leeds Racial Equality Unit, and then we adopted a very different stance and widened our area of operations. So a hate crime is any criminal offence which is perceived by the victim or any other person to be motivated by hostility or prejudice towards someone based on a personal characteristic. And the characteristics which are monitored for statistical purposes in the UK are disability, race and ethnicity, religion, belief, matters of faith, effectively, one's sexual orientation, or the transgender identity of an individual. Now, like a previous speaker, there isn't in the UK, there isn't a specific separate category of crime called hate crime. So, you know, these are very familiar offences, everything from murder in the most extreme case, situations like Stephen Lawrence, and lots of other tragedies that have followed on from that horrendous incident, but also other types of offences. And there's a list there. I won't read them all out, but verbal assault, verbal abuse, threats, harassment, homicide, burglary, and threat can all have an element which is motivated by hostility towards an individual. Significantly, where crimes are reported as having a hate element attached to them, it allows a court at the end of a process, after a successful investigation and prosecution, to apply a higher sentence or an enhanced sentence. And therefore it's important. It's society effectively acknowledging that the impact of a hate crime is even more severe than other types of crime. I won't bore you with lots of statistics, but, you know, in terms of the UK, you know, it's important to recognise that very much race is still the top category of reported and monitored hate crimes, with sexual orientation coming in close second. So religion is quite low, 8,730 recorded hate crimes relating to religion in the past year. You'll notice disability is very high. For a while, it was one of our highest characteristics, and for 1 year, it actually overtook reported race incidents. And what you've got on the right there is a slide which is just indicating what the percentage of increase has been over a fixed period of time. there are all sorts of reasons why figures increase, including, people's awareness, their knowledge of services like ours, awareness raising campaigns, incidents that might, raise the profile of hate crime in the media or the press. And we're seeing this steady rise over a number of years. We had a peculiar situation also in 2015, 2016, partly related to the migrant crisis, so-called, but also because of, in the UK, the campaign to move towards a referendum which would take us out of the EU, effectively, regrettably, from my perspectives. If people are speaking to UK, to Stop Hate UK, the helpline team, which is there 24 hours a day, and I've lots of experience of staffing that line myself, it's effectively a listening service. We're there to listen. We're not there to judge. We're there to steer someone through their situation. That can be quite often dealing with their emotional needs initially, but then taking details of a report if they give us consent to do that. We can do anonymous referrals to the police for things like intelligence, community cohesion. When I talk about our helpline service, I'm talking about a whole range of ways that we facilitate people's access to us. So that can be by telephone, it can be by text relay service, ordinary SMS, British Sign Language. We take email inquiries, we have a dedicated online chat function, or we have an online reporting form. So there are various ways that people can actually access our services. Because a service user may require emotional support, information, and some practical guidance, depending on their needs. So we are offering a very much a listening ear. And that's specifically important, I think, where people are ringing immediately after the occurrence of an incident or a crime. So most of my colleagues and myself have got experience with counselling and long-term experience of staffing these type of helplines. We can provide information around the criminal justice system. We can refer people to local partner agencies where they may need practical or emotional support, because we're operating across the UK in different locations. And that means that we don't always develop thorough links with local partner organisations, and that will to some extent depend on how long we've been operating in a particular geographical area. We can provide lots of practical help around things like home security, fire risk assessments, and we can liaise with those other agencies. But we would really seek to refer people to a more local based agency to offer ongoing and long-term support. Some people may have a need to move property if they're a tenant, and therefore we can liaise with their landlord or their social housing provider. We can also be involved in multi-agency meetings. They're fairly localized meetings between police forces, local government, and other agencies that support the different groups that we work with. And that's about intervention, it's about advocacy, it's about making sure that the agencies work collectively together to resolve harm and reduce risk, really. We do a lot of work now to encourage people to report, because there's a lot of evidence that underreporting is fairly endemic, and it varies from group or particular communities that are being affected. So these are all positive reasons why we think people should report hate incidents and hate crime. Practical support and advice for the person contacting us, potential to present an escalation of a situation, particularly in a community or in a neighborhood dispute or a conflict between individual families, neighbors. We can help drive change in policy and law. We can help identify trends and hotspots in a particular community, all of which is moving towards increasing community safety, trying to prevent the recurrence of situations and allow us to take action. This is a slide which is specifically relating to a new provision which we've established in the last couple of years. And this is about us reacting to what we saw during the onset of lockdown and the COVID crisis, where we saw new communities from East and Southeast Asia being targeted and contacting us for the first time because of the misinformation, the disinformation which was circulating, and the use of rhetoric by politicians which labelled COVID-19 as a Chinese virus. So we saw partnerships with a number of other organisations to provide a dedicated helpline. This is funded effectively by the British government, although without any strings attached in terms of the way that we operate, in order to be able to maintain our independence. We try and be as innovative as possible, because we acknowledge that there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution to a problem which is endemic in society. So we work in partnership with other organisations. We work with both tech firms and companies, as well as academic institutions to support research. So this is just one example of an app which people in Merseyside, that's the Liverpool, Greater Liverpool area in the UK, can download, which will allow them to supply video evidence, photographs, take recordings, and give us a geolocation. It's just, we're looking at ways to make the whole reporting process easier and as simple as possible for people, really. We've got a lot of provision now for people under the age of 18 or under the age of 24. So those are just dedicated helplines and information services. More and more, we do campaigning work. So what you're looking at now are just some of our regular merchandise and posters, as well as our social media accounts. We produce quarterly reports where we are commissioned to provide a service. So in places like Merseyside, we would supply the people that fund us with information based on their requirements, but also regularly keep in touch so that we can spot any trends or react to any localized situations. So, for example, Merseyside is one of the places that is currently housing migrants in migrant hotels, as our media calls them, and therefore there's been quite a lot of community unrest. And so we work closely both to monitor the situation there. I spend a lot of time on local Facebook pages, for instance, but also look at ways that we can support both the migrants themselves and the communities that host them. More focus on provision of training. It's always a struggle to be able to fund these things, but where we can, we offer free training for local schools, colleges, and that's an increasingly sought after and growth area of our work, really. So what you've got there is a long list of the types of courses that we've been offering recently. My own work is fairly specialized, and it relates to the online space. So I've basically run a number of projects, some of them specifically focused on things like Islamophobia. One of the things I'm proudest of is a project called, I've forgotten the name of my project, I apologize, but I'm sure I'll remember it at some point when somebody asks me a question at a later time. But working with researchers, working with academics to teach algorithms to recognize Islamophobia in real time and produce graphic representations of the interconnections between accounts. And the specific piece I work very hard and I'm really proud of is trying to teach algorithms to come up with draft counter narratives to challenge on a one-to-one basis things that are posted online. So yeah, I've got a lot more to say, I'm sure, than I've got time to say it in, but I thank you for listening and I apologize for my dull monotone, particularly to the interpreter that's had to deal with it.
Dear Bill, you were great, no problem at all.
I think I tried to use my holiday voice, as my Czech friends call it, and not my real voice.
Oh, we're all right. And first of all, thank you for supporting all those who in need. And also thank you for letting us know of your very special and practical work. Şimdi üçüncü konuşmacımıza geçeceğiz. Sevgili Funda Tekin.
We will now turn to our third panelist, Funda Tekin. She has been actively working on the Freedom of Belief initiative. Since Mine has already talked about the Freedom of Belief initiative at the onset of the webinar, I will not get into this. Funda Tekin is the project assistance and communication coordinator of the Freedom of Belief initiative. After completing her undergraduate degree in journalism and political science and international relations at Bahçeşehir University, she worked as a researcher and research coordinator of the Media Watch on Hate Speech project of the Hrant Dink Foundation. She continues her postgraduate degree at Istanbul Bilgi University on social projects and NGO management. Before I turn to Funda, I would like to once again remind our participants, if you have any questions to any of our panelists, you can type your question in the chat box. And at the end of all presentations, I will be reading out your questions. Over to you, Funda. Thank you very much, Betsy. Can you all see my presentation? Yes, we can see your screen. Well, first of all, I would like to thank all our panelists as well as all our participants today. I will do my best to keep my presentation short. Discrimination, hate, crimes are quite global phenomena, as it's the case in Turkey. And in Turkey, we also experience hate crimes motivated by bias based on religion, belief, and non-belief. And as the Freedom of Belief initiative, we are trying to address all these hate crimes. So in my presentation, I would like to tell you more about the activities we carry out to combat hate crimes. We are carrying out workshops and monitoring and reporting. Since 2019, we provide our civil society submission to OSCE about hate crimes based on freedom of religion and belief. And we also do our annual reports about hate crimes in cooperation with various communities of belief. We published those reports in 2020, 2021, 2022, and we are also working on a guideline that will be published soon. Why did we feel the need to monitor and report hate crimes based on freedom of religion, belief, and non-belief? First, we needed to make sure that all these different categories will be documented in a segregated way. In Turkey, we don't have any dedicated study on hate crimes motivated by bias against freedom of religion, belief, or non-belief. We also have issues about the legislation. We don't have any dedicated legal provision. We have a Turkish criminal code. There have been a number of initiatives, even draft laws in order to include hate crime as a standalone provision in our Turkish criminal code, but we could not achieve that. We had Article 1 to 4 of the Turkish Criminal Code, and in 2014, this code was amended and now includes discrimination and hate. So this was initially an anti-discrimination provision, which now includes hate crimes. And by the way, this provision does not include any measures about hate crimes against sexual orientation or ethnic identity. As for crimes that are committed with bias motivation, there are a number of provisions, but again, none of those provisions are comprehensive enough.
Nefret suçu boyutunun ele alındığını neredeyse hiç görmüyoruz. Etkili bir hukuki süreci görmüyoruz.
We do not see an effective legal procedure going on, and the legal procedures are not being applied for the groups that need to be protected. But generally, those laws are implemented against the ones that are vulnerable, and impunity applies, and the records are not kept properly. That avoids the victims to get the necessary service. As we do not have enough data, we can't make the necessary comparisons and establish a proper strategy to fight against with those kind of cases. Actually, in April 2021, in the action plan, there were some targets that were set for some arrangements to be established to collect healthy statistics and a database for misdemeanors and the crimes concerning hate crimes to be collected, but it had not been applied as it was set as a target. So what type of monitoring instruments do we use? First of all, we are screening a year, a time bracket that corresponds to a year that starts with 1st of January till 31st of December. And we use certain keywords while screening, while we're monitoring the media. For example, Alevite, atheist, Jew, cemetery, attack, Alevite prayer houses, cemevi, hate crimes, church, headscarf, Shalom Agos, Thirha, those kind of keywords we use for deeper screening. And also we talk to people about the events that they have experienced during that specific year, because not every event is reported in the media. For that reason, media screening is not always enough. That is why we talk to the people from different communities via a form that we have prepared, and we try to get connected and establish a network via social media channels. And when we list those events, we try to collect further information on every specific event. If we can detect the events and the persons involved, we try to get in touch with them. Of course, it's not always possible to get in touch with them, but but we do not have any capacity to carry out a legal study on that. We just list out those events. But of course, we cannot come up with an official hate crime definition based on what we collect. And we try to find out whether any kind of inspection had been initiated or a case had been brought, and we record it. In terms of the methodology we use, we carry out an international standards review, and what do the conventions and the European Court of Human Rights verdicts and European Security and Cooperation Organization definitions do indicate, and how how do the verdicts in Turkey concerning hate crimes were decided. So we just list them out. But of course, we can't have access to every bit of hate crime. We just managed to establish a general framework because there are certain challenges we face. First of all, it is quite difficult to have access to public records. There's lack of transparency. It is quite a challenge for us to reach the court verdicts, and the government is reporting to OSCE just like we do, but there's a major gap, the difference. For example, there are certain events that have been listed as attacks against faith prayer places, but the details are lacking. For 2020, it was reported as 69 cases, and it is only 12 cases on the records of the civil society. So, of course, there are certain reasons for that. So, the victims, they fear of exclusion. That's why they don't notify. They're afraid they don't notify. And victims, they believe nothing would happen. And if they are to notify, they would face with a further negative attitude by the police and by the community. That is why they don't say anything. And we do not have the capability of having further access to police records, and we don't have that capacity. And not all our connections and the networks are able to gather every bit and piece of information. And it is quite difficult to collect data and have access to the people that were involved in the cases that we managed to detect. Data verification is another challenging step for us. For example, sometimes we happen to find out the case. For example, it writes Kurd and Alevite and death on the door, but then we see that this is a fake event that was created by the family that were trying to apply as a refugee. So they were trying to victimize themselves. When we just dig the story, we found that the family came up with that story to victimize themselves so that their asylum application will be accepted. So, so first of all, what should we find out? First of all, there needs to be an action that is defined in the laws as a crime. And if, for example, threat, defamation, harming bodily harm or material harm without having any kind of bias motivation, and those are the basic characteristics of hate crime. If there is a specific intention for a certain group of people, for example, if a space is attacked because of the connection of a person or a group of persons because of their religion, belief, then that is defined as a hate crime. It can be against the Jews, Christians, Muslims, Alevites, the ones who are using headscarf, atheists, or any other groups that can be listed. We try to follow up on these, but in the OSCE reporting, the classification is a bit missing. For example, the Alevite prejudice is not obvious. It is listed underneath the Muslims, but for Turkish case, that makes the Alawite hate crimes invisible. We actually reported the situation to OSCE and described that this is not relevant for Turkey. There needs to be a differentiation in the categorization that is being used in Turkey. They haven't been able to do that yet because of the very many official procedures that they need to go through. And the prejudice against the ones who are using headscarf. This has a gender bias in it. That is why we define it as a separate title. And any kind of violent action against the physical property of individuals or attacking against prayer houses and against sexual crimes. All of these are listed in our cases. So if the victims or the people who know about it wants to report, they need to tell us when, where, how, who were involved, how did they learn about it from media or directly, whether or not they have detailed information about victims and why it should be considered as a hate crime. Have there been any bodily actions, any defamation, threats, damaging the property? On specific days were those crimes committed, on special days, on specific days, or any kind of symbols that they were wearing or having on them while they were committing those crimes. So this is 2021 data. Actually, the data for 2022 is quite similar as well. Mainly the major groups that are targeted are Alawites, Christians, Jews, and the attacking prayer places and the cemetery is the main type of crime. So generally a specified place associated with certain groups of people, generally those are the houses of the Alawites, marking their houses and attacking those neighborhoods. And the same place, the same space is being attacked and attacked and attacked on systematic basis. And since 2021, the letters are very small, but those are examples. And from our website, you can see the details of the monitoring report that we have prepared. So within the framework of our report, even though we do not include the data, in some of the attacks against the Alawites, we've seen an overlapping events. This is beyond the hate crimes that goes beyond religion and belief that necessitates multi-stakeholder studies in a holistic manner, gender, ethnic origin. So those are the issues that are also involved in. So we ask ourselves whether or not we should involve gender advocacy groups, ethnic advocacy groups, and work together, because people are being attacked because of all of those factors that they embody within themselves. So those people who are attacked because of all of these properties need to be advocated in a multi-stakeholder approach. So after we submit our report, we contribute to OSCE mechanisms, and there had been some inspection motions submitted at the Turkish Grand National Assembly. We managed to improve visibility in the media and improved awareness and opened up debates on these issues, and had been the baseline or a resource for other studies and research, and helped creating content, and provided resources for other international and national researchers. So for long-term possible impact we can create, or at least we aim to create, as we're trying to increase opportunities for cooperation and joint advocacy efforts, strengthening religion and the belief groups, and strengthening the vulnerable parts of the community that are subject to hate crimes. Thank you very much for listening to us. Thank you very much. Actually, since the day that I met FOB, I try to follow as much as I can what you're doing. And if we can work together, we'll be very pleased as Avlaremoz to work with you and cooperate with you. So there are questions that we are receiving, and we don't have much of a time, so I can read out your questions and get your response. Maybe I can list out all the questions at once. I will read them in Turkish. How did you get started? Let's keep racism out of stadium. And what kind of how did you get it started? What kind of suggestions you can give us to start similar campaigns? Another question to Anna. What type of difficulties have you encountered? How did you overcome them? Anna, can you respond to these two questions? And then I will continue with the other questions, and you may continue asking your questions from the chat.
Difficulties, yes. So I will start from the second questions. We document anti-Semitism, racism, xenophobia, and the atmosphere in Poland that we experience last few years. It's difficult for many reasons, mostly because of the political reasons, but politicians have the responsibility for general atmosphere in the country, but what we have to face and experience is mostly online hate speech, far right, and even people that just support the right part of the political scene in Poland are very much against the activity of Never Again. They do not accept that, for example, our attitude to the refugees from different countries, that we are so open, that we try to promote the multiculturalism, that we are welcomed for these people in Poland. So the attitude is completely different, and they attacked us because we publish information about the racism, and we call the racism as the problem. And we also were attacked by the Polish national TV, but I should say Polish government TV. Nowadays, it's, in our opinion, and not our, it's no longer free independent television, but is a government station. We were attacked for even taking part in the international conferences connected the topic of anti-Semitism in Poland in the past and contemporary. And our faces were shown, our surnames, and as you may imagine, it's not pleasant. It was not safe for us, but it happens from time to time. So this is what is difficult for us, but I would point out that definitely more difficult is that when people who experience racism in Poland, who live here or just visit Poland and are here temporary, they contact us because someone split at them, because someone used some physical violence against them, and they rather would not like to go to the police. They just don't want, for different reasons, to report it, and they ask us what to do. Or when, for example, parents from Ukrainian parents who came to Poland as refugees, and their children go to the Polish school, and their children are humiliated in Polish schools. I don't want to say that it's a general phenomenon. No, that's some cases. But when these parents contact us and they talk that they ask the teacher to do something, to intervene, or director of the school, and the reaction was no adequate, or there was no reaction, and the children don't want to go to the school anymore, and they ask us what to do. And what is the most difficult for me to tell that yes, I can give you some contact details to other NGOs that can give you free legal help, but I know that there is not good solution to change the situation, to really help these parents, because it's general atmosphere. Because when children at some class or some school have this anti-Ukrainian attitude, it's some very long work is necessary, not just one meeting, not just one even good talking between the children and teacher. And sometimes I hate to confirm, I hate to be aware that my only honest answer should be, I don't know. There is not good solution. We will try to give you some information. We will try to contact you with some organization that will give you good loyal help. But there are many situations that no lawyers are needed, but people who would be ready to change their thinking, and it's something very, very difficult. And what was the second question? I'm sorry.
So the second question was, just a minute. So yes, so how did the Let's Kick Racism Out of Stadiums started? And what would you advise for the organization of these campaigns?
It started in the middle of 90s, because that was the time when football hooligans, they showed even flags with swastikas, and without any consequences. It was a time when the black-skinned players in Poland were thrown, the bananas were thrown at them. And the level of racism or fascism was very high on the stadiums. And I was not a member of Never Again then, but the founder of this campaign and the founder of the Never Again Association, Marcin Kornak, he told me that when Never Again started to creating this anti-racism campaign among Polish football fans, many people, they didn't believe that it's possible to change anything. It was such a situation that football fans, let's say fans, were in power, and they told the clubs what to do and how to do, and what was going on the stadiums. But consequently, with a consequence, year after year, something started to change on the Polish stadiums, and nowadays it would be difficult to find, for example, Celtic cross on the first league match during the football, during the first league top class football match, but it's still possible. But it's a rare situation. But what has not changed very much is the lack of reaction to such incidents. Still, there are racist symbols, anti-Semitic songs, anti-LGBT flags, and the consequences and the reaction from the football authorities is rare and is too weak. And if there is any financial fine, it's humorous. It's very low. comparing, for example, to the fines from UEFA. And yes, but it was the situation 20 years ago looked different than today, but still there is much to be done.
Thank you. So another question for Bill.
Sorry, what would I recommend? Just one word: to believe that you can succeed.
Thank you. Bire gelen soruyu yine Türkçe okuyacağım. İki soru.
I will be reading out the next two questions in Turkish. In Turkey, we don't have a dedicated helpline in Turkey for victims of hate crime. So if we are to establish such a helpline, what should be the initial steps? And the second question, how do you do fact-checking or data verification while you are doing your monitoring and report?
So, how do you set up a helpline? Well, that's a big question. We'd probably take all evening to do that, really. I mean, initially we did it exclusively with volunteers. And I think, you know, certainly it was possible, but it takes a high level of commitment without reward, really. Also, I think there is a specialist skill involved in listening to someone, and therefore it takes, I think, or helpline benefits from recruiting specialist ex-advice workers, and our helpline operators are paid for their services. That was my introduction to the helpline service. I think the difficulty is always going to be funding. I think initially we had an expectation that we would prove our worth and we would get significant funding to cover the whole of the UK, hence our organisational title. That hasn't really happened except in very rare circumstances like the On Your Side helpline, specifically for people coming out of Hong Kong or from communities in East and Southeast Asia. We've also in the past been funded for short periods to have helplines specifically for LGBTQ plus community right across the UK and for people with disabilities. And I think that's one of the things that I find most frustrating is this stop-start initiative where you're funded to deliver a service for a specific period of time, and then either somebody locally takes it on, quite often without the level of expertise and experience. So that's a constant challenge. I think the other thing is that one of the observations I would make is that increasingly the work that we do has become politicized, not only in terms of security, like Anna's experience of being careful about personal identity, about location, about the location of our offices, because we encounter extremists both online and offline. But also it's become part of a sort of, how do I put this? A demarcation. I think, you know, we live in societies where we're becoming increasingly polarized, and some of that polarization is, from my perspective, a consequence of the online space and the way that algorithms work to try and divide us into either or situations. So your biggest challenge is going to be getting the right people and getting the funding to maintain any level of service. I forget what the second question was, I'm afraid. So.
İkinci soru, bir saniye.
1 second. So the second question was about fact-checking or data verification. Do you do any verification before you write your reports? And how do you do that?
It's a difficult question to give you a straight answer, because at the end of the day, we're providing a sort of non-judgmental confidential listening service. So the information that we receive belongs to the client until they give us permission to divulge that information. So verification is quite a hard one. At the end of the day, one of the main reasons people contact us is for advice about what might happen if they report this formally, officially to the police. So in that sense, what we're doing is taking detailed information from either a witness or the victim, in a sense, trying to get that information as accurate as possible. And that can quite often take time, because that's about settling the person down, reiterating what they've said to us, clarifying that information. But ultimately, that information is then, with the consult of the client, forwarded to the police for further investigation. So in that sense, the verification is done by the police. I think where it's problematic and where it's also contentious is when we record incidents. We also are subject increasingly to what I would call malicious or vexatious contacts, and that can include people making things up, being abusive to our staff on the phone, pretending to be a victim when they're not. And that's a challenge for someone like me that is staffing a helpline to try and make sense of that interaction, but also to sift through it and to give that person time so that I make some sort of professional judgment about whether or not that person is telling me the truth, or whether it's just for their own amusement or for some other unfathomable purpose where people pretend to be a victim. And I've had direct interactions with people who've done that. Tends to be young people. It becomes a game, and it occurs for a short period of time until the person gets bored or finds some other way to amuse themselves, and disappears from contacting our helpline. That's not a thorough answer to your question, because I think it's quite a difficult question to answer in the context of the work that we do, which is not necessarily about verification. It's as much as anything about numbers. I would make a comment though, which is that it's really important that you capture, when you're taking reports, the story of the person making that contact, and that information, that qualitative information, can be as powerful as a lobbying tool, because it's one of the things that I think we have in common is the emotional impact these situations can have on us as human beings. And I find that more effective as a tool to convince someone that there's a problem than statistics, which can become unfathomable to people. So qualitative information, listening to people's stories, lived experience is as important in convincing policymakers and politicians and the people that have got the ability to fund our services. Sorry.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you. Şimdi Funda Hanım'a gelen iki tane soruyu yönelteceğim.
There are two questions addressed to Funda Tekin. In Turkey, there should be more hate crimes based on freedom of religion and belief. So are you preparing general reports on those, and what kind of partnership is needed with other civil society organizations so that this particular issue can also be included in broader reports? We cannot really identify all hate crimes because we already have a dedicated field. We mostly focus on hate-motivated crimes based on freedom of religion and belief, and we can only capture and portray a very brief portion of hate crimes. And also we need to take into account that most of the victims have the tendency to hide the hate crimes that they were subjected to.
Sonrasında birlikte bir izleme raporu yazmak konusunda.
Then you asked another question about compiling a joint report, a broader report on all hate crimes. I think this would be a very good suggestion. For instance, such a report can cover hate crimes against LGBTI plus or migrants, because I believe that hate crimes against LGBT communities and migrant communities are the ones that we encounter most. So it would be quite striking to see an aggregated report, and perhaps it can also be more influential to make advocacy on this.
Bağlantısında bir sıkıntı var, gidip geliyor. Ona olan soruyu şimdilik geçerek aslında hem Anna'ya hem Bill'e gelen bir soruyu yönelteceğim. Çok fazla vaktimiz
Now, I
kalmadı.
would like to refer to a question both to Anna and Bill. Anna has a connection problem, so this is addressed to Bill. When there is a hate crime that happens in Poland, is there any solidarity exhibited from the other communities? If yes, how?
Tabii ben bunu İngiltere olarak sormalıyım. Bile yanlışlıkla.
Of course, when it is addressed to Bill, it needs to be UK, not Poland. I'm sorry, I said Poland, but it needs to be UK.
Welcome back, Anna.
Yes, someone unmuted me again. I'm sorry. And I can speak and I can address this question. Sometimes it is shown, but it's again the situation that the solidarity is very much needed, and too often there is no reaction. And coming back to the middle of 2015, when the hate crimes against people with black and dark skin happened more and more often, some local authorities, yes, they visited them, they showed their solidarity, there were press articles, and sometimes even the politicians on high level, they showed some kind of sympathy and they said, yeah, racism is evil. But it happened not often enough, and it started to happen rare, and nowadays even the word racism, refugee, migrant, it's a part of political discourse, and it's difficult to find, just some simple gesture of solidarity. And some other minorities, from time to time, yes, and there are, for example, open letters that some groups of organization support one of the organization that is attacked, or support the victim of this attack. So it's definitely more often and during in the NGO that on the authorities level.
Thank you, Anna. Bill, also, can you please tell us the same thing from your aspect?
I think maybe in the UK we are more used to expressions of solidarity. It will depend on the incident or the event, but for example, sometimes these things can be catalytic in the sense of they can galvanize public opinions. So, for example, we had incidents related to the last European Cup final where British players missed penalties and were subject to immediate, vicious and high volumes of racial abuse on social media. That was a very positive thing in some senses because it created a public outcry against that racism directed at those young men for missing a penalty. At the same time, there's an equal and opposite reaction, so you get both. But I think it's really important that organizations like Stop Hate UK regularly show solidarity. It's beneficial to us in terms of raising our profile if I'm cynical about it, but it's also about sharing this commonality and the intersectionality, which is something that, I think has been stressed in various answers to questions, that people can be impacted by more than one aspect of their personal identity. And therefore there is a sense of growing solidarity in the UK. That isn't to say that I'm complacent or unconcerned, I'm not. And I'm seeing rises in all sorts of negative behaviours rooted around antagonism towards people's identity. But I think maybe expressions of solidarity at the moment are more common in the UK.
Thank you, Bill, for your answer. Çok fazla soru geldi ancak vaktimizi oldukça aştık. Bu sebeple maalesef diğer
Yes,
soruları...
there's so many students, but we've exceeded our time, the time that are allocated to us. So I'm not reading out all of the questions. I just would like to thank you all for participating. And if there's anything more to be added, I'd like to give the floor to Ms. Mine Yıldırım. Thank you very much, Betsy Penso, for your moderation. Ms. Anna Tatar and Bill Hope from Stop Hate UK, and Ms. Funda Tekin for their very comprehensive and valuable presentations. And I'd like to thank all the participants for their interest, for their time, and for their questions. This is a very challenging question, and all the struggles that we are exhibiting and all the solidarity that is being put forward was quite inspiring. And all of what I heard indicates what a long run, what a long-term run it would require. Learning about the history of Stop Hate, it just gives us the indication that this is a long-term road that we need to walk through. You can follow us from Twitter, Instagram, from our website to learn about our activities. Thank you very much for listening to us. Good evening and have a nice evening. Bye-bye.
İyi akşamlar, görüşmek üzere.
Thanks for the invitation, and have a lovely evening. What's
Thank
left
you.
of it. Really appreciate the time and commitment that you've given to listen to us. So thank you.